see momentarily what that means to us, for us. Facebook, we have Ankur Prabhu, who actually is in Facebook. So if I have grief, then he should be able to solve my problems with Facebook broadcast. Okay, on a lighter note, we are definitely broadcasting. So we'll get started here after these brief prayers to the spiritual master. Om Ajnanatimarandhasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Thank you so much once again for joining us here on Zoom call, as well as those of you who have joined us on Facebook. We're going to continue to our studies of the Bhagavad-gita and the related literature. It's very interesting that we are reading chapter number 4, which talks about the transcendental knowledge and not the kind of knowledge that we get from anywhere and everywhere. And we also saw the way in which you can gain the transcendental knowledge. So can somebody tell me what is the way you receive or gain or acquire transcendental knowledge? Say that again.
Dedicatedness, faithfulness.
To whom?
Krishna.
Hare Krishna Varshana Mataji. So what is the way to achieve transcendental knowledge in the context of this chapter?
The self-realized soul can obtain the knowledge. Even the most sinful one can obtain the knowledge.
From whom?
From Guru, Krishna, Veda.
Who will just come and give you the knowledge like that?
Spiritual, Mataji, oh my God. No, you have to surrender yourself.
Right. And what is that verse?
Sarvadharman Parityajya Mamekam Saranam Vraja. Is it?
No. We are in chapter 4.
Yeah.
Garima Mataji says you have to do service. Yeah. To whom?
Devotional service.
Yes. And what is the verse? No. You have to do service to the spiritual master. Tadvidi pranipatena paripashnena sevaya upadeshyanti te jnanam jnanina tatsadarshana. This verse, yeah, Garima Mataji says, Guru, yes, absolutely. So you have to do that. And Tadvidi pranipatena, it is 4.34. Okay, remember there's 4.34. And no jumping to chapter 18 of the Bhagavad-gita. We are still in chapter 4. So, yeah. Okay. Before you can jump and say, I'm going to do Sarvadharman Parityajya, I'm going to surrender to Krishna, you have to go through the medium of the ... Who?
Spiritual master.
Spiritual master for 500 points. Thank you so much. That's the essence, right? And so we are talking about the transcendental knowledge can be attained by serving a spiritual master. And what kind of a spiritual master? Any spiritual master on the road? No. A bona fide spiritual master. And a bona fide spiritual master is one who has seen the truth. Jnanina tattvadarshina. Right? So a jnani who has seen the truth, only that person can give you the true knowledge to you, right? So it's very important that your teacher should be a bona fide teacher in the disciplic succession. Right? He should also be backed up by a battery of spiritual masters. Okay. So should we get started? And what would be the verse for today?
I think 30.
No, I think you have to give me precise verse. How can we do
39 or 38?
It's 438.
438 for 500 points. Okay. Right. So we had talked about in chapter 4.34 about, Tadvidi pranipatena paripashnena sevaya. It says that you have to go and surrender to a spiritual master and do service to the spiritual master. And then it said that, which was 4.34 here, just try to learn the truth, right? And then after that, he says that when you obtain the dear knowledge, you will not fall. You'll never fall into any such situations, because you will see that everybody is a part of Supreme, or in other words, they are Krishna's. And then it says, even if you're considered to be the most sinful of all sinners, when you're situated in this situation, you'll be able to cross over the ocean of misery, right? And this knowledge was equated to be the boat, right? Of this, then you'll climb on that boat and you'll cross over an ocean. And we did do some verses from Srimad Bhagavatam on where different people were talking about ocean, this world as an ocean of miseries. And then, of course, in the next verse, we also talked about it as a blazing fire. So there was also a reference to blazing fire. And it says that, what does the fire do? So while this knowledge is able to go and transcend you across the material ocean, right, the fire of knowledge will burn to desire. What will it burn to desire? All the reactions to the material activities. So what happens is when you start taking to devotional service, you are now boarded the boat, which will help you cross over the material ocean. But because of the reactions of our previous karma, certain bad things will still continue to happen. So it's like you have boarded a boat, but you have boarded the boat with a very big stone, right? So what's the stone going to do? It is going to pull you down into the ocean. It will make the boat sink, right? So our karmic reactions sometimes are going to impede in our way, in the path of devotional service, going back to Godhead. Right? But then what is he saying? That when these kind of things start happening to you, when you think that I'm a devotee and why are bad things happening to me, remember that it is our karmic reactions of our previous life that are happening. So then it's like, but what I thought I was going to go to Krishna. Krishna said, I love everybody. You are all mine. I love devotees much more. What is this happening? Right? So you have to remember, bump up your devotional service, pay more attention. People can ignore a lot. For many, many years, they can ignore the spiritual master, the instructions, devotional service, and get cluttered, and get the life cluttered. But he's saying that the fire of knowledge, the fire of knowledge, that's the only thing that's going to burn to ashes all reactions to material activities. And we had seen that ashes are very final, right? If you take a man and you burn him, no trace at all. You'll get a little picture of ashes. That's it. The ashes means burning something is very, very final. So this is going to burn, right? On the other hand, if you cross over the material ocean, if you look back, the ocean is still there. There could be a chance that you might want to go for a swim into the ocean again after having crossed it, right? So that fear is still there. So that risk is still there. So what devotional service does is that even if you turn your back and look at the ocean, it cannot have its effect on you because it has burnt, all the reactions that you would have, because of which you would have gone into the material ocean again. And of course, you have no desires other than the desire to please the Lord. Okay, so this is what the verses have been talking to us about. And then we go to text number 38 here. That is today's verse. And let's look at today's verse. What does today's verse say to us? 4.38. Nahi jnane na sadrisham pavitram iha vidyate tatsvayam yoga samsiddhaha kalenatmani vindati. So synonyms. Na, nothing. He, certainly. Jnanena, with knowledge. Sadrisham, in comparison. Pavitram, sanctified. Iha, in this world. Vidyate, exist. Tat, that. Swayam, himself. Yoga, in devotion. Samsiddhaha, he who is mature. Kalena, in course of time. Atmani, in himself. Vindati, enjoys. So, if you were to help here, if a person becomes mature, what would you call him?
Samsiddha.
Samsiddhaha, very nice. And if he is sanctified?
Pavitram.
Pavitram, right? Very nice. And if somebody is enjoying, what is that called?
Vindati.
Vindati. Okay, very nice. So, nahi jnanena sadrisham pavitram iha vidyate tatsvayam go yoga samsiddhaha kalenatmani vindati. In this world, there is nothing so sublime and pure as transcendental knowledge. Such knowledge is the mature fruit of all mysticism. And one who becomes accomplished in the practice of devotional service enjoys this knowledge within himself in due course of time. What is due course of time in Sanskrit?
Kalena.
Kalena.
Kalena. Nahi jnanena sadrisham pavitram iha vidyate tatsvayam yoga samsiddhaha kalena atmani vindati. So in this world, there is nothing so sublime and pure, right? So you have pure water, 100% pure water. Different companies sell you pure water. They charge you dollars for that. But then in this world, there's nothing so sublime and pure as transcendental knowledge. Such knowledge is the mature fruit of all mysticism. And one who has become accomplished in the practice of devotional service enjoys this knowledge within himself in due course of time. So, purport by Srila Prabhupada, when Srila Prabhupada ki jai. When we speak of transcendental knowledge, we do so in terms of spiritual understanding. As such, there is nothing so sublime and pure as transcendental knowledge. Ignorance is the cause of our bondage. Can you all repeat?
Ignorance is the
cause of the bondage.
Very good. One more time.
Ignorance is the
cause of our bondage.
Very nice. And those who can't speak, can you please type it and send it to me? Ignorance is the cause of our bondage. Okay. Then, and knowledge is the cause of our liberation. Say that one more time.
Knowledge
is
the cause of our liberation.
One more time.
Knowledge
is the
cause of our liberation.
And now say the whole thing. Ignorance is the cause of our bondage.
Ignorance is the cause of our bondage.
Ignorance is
knowledge
the
is
cause
the-
of our bondage, and knowledge is the
Knowledge
cause
is the
of
cause
our
of our
liberation.
liberation.
All right. So what causes your bondage?
Ignorance.
Ignorance.
Okay. And then what role will knowledge play?
Liberation.
It will give you liberation. All right. Right. So all right. So when we speak of transcendental knowledge, Prabhupada is saying ignorance is the cause of our bondage and knowledge is the cause of our liberation. This knowledge is the mature fruit of devotional service. And when one is situated in transcendental knowledge, he need not search for peace elsewhere, for he enjoys peace within himself. In other words, this transcendental knowledge and peace culminate in Krishna consciousness. That is the last word in Bhagavad-gita. Period. That's what Bhagavad-gita is all about, right? It is a very important thing that, you have to have peace within yourself. And that happiness is not going to come from the outside world. We have got our senses, they'll start seeking other objects. They'll go and touch the object like eyes, the senses, right? The sense of sight will go and touch the various forms, right? And we'll try to enjoy the beautiful scenery, it's a beautiful person, it's a beautiful movie, it's a beautiful dress, like that, right? But then you will never be satiated, you'll never be satisfied with it. It's never going to happen. Why? Because it's against your nature. You are a spirit soul and you're trying to satisfy yourself with yourself with material things, in as much as, if you give plain tur dal to somebody who's from south of India, he won't like it or she won't like it because they like sambar, right? So it goes against their natures. When things go against the nature, you have to, think about that. Another thing that is very important here in this particular verse is, it's a very, very powerful verse, is this verse is that this person enjoys this knowledge within himself in due course of time. That is also very, very important, that you will enjoy this knowledge in due course of time. So it's not that it'll happen overnight. So you don't say that I'm chanting for so many years, it's not coming. I'm listening to lectures from morning till evening, it's not coming. In due course of time, that will happen. And once that happens and you get the knowledge, then you will start to enjoy. Till such time as that doesn't happen, you continue to do your practice, continue to do your devotional service, and it will come, it's guaranteed, because Krishna says that Kaunteya pratijanehi name bhaktya pranashyati. Okay. So here Krishna is telling about, he's just talking about knowledge, right? There's nothing so sublime and as transcendental knowledge. And such knowledge is the mature fruit of all mysticism, right? And then here he says, nahi jnanena sadrisham, right? So gyan, sadrisham is nothing, there is nothing compared to it. Nothing can be seen. Drish means to see, right? The sadrisham, the sa means same. So nothing can come, you cannot see something same as this knowledge of transcendental. So it's like the peak and it's like the apex that you have. Okay. In this world, there is nothing like sublime, right? And you're going to get this in due course of time. And in the purport, Prabhupada told a very important sentence. And what was the sentence?
Ignorance is the cause of bondage, and knowledge is
the cause of our liberation.
Exactly right, right? So having said that, we will just go and spend a little bit of time to go to our favorite granth, which is our favorite scripture.
Bhagavatam.
Bhagavatam, of course. So we'll go to Bhagavatam. So we've been talking about Bhagavatam, and our favorite in Bhagavatam is the Dhruv Maharaj, we know, right? So Dhruv Maharaj was the son of? Father.
Getting the name, Mataji. Garima got it. Uttanpad.
Uttanpad, there you go, right?
Uttanpad.
So Uttanpad, and who's Uttanpad? Who's Uttanpad's father? Who's Uttanpad's, who are Uttanpad's sisters? Do you know them?
Manu. Garima said.
Garima got it again, Manu, very nice. And for the last question, who are his sisters? I will give you a hint. P, A, and D. Okay, Vidyavadhu is also answering from India. Okay. Yes, you're right. And yeah, so who is?
Garima Mataji told Aditi and Diti.
Diti.
She said Aditi. P-A-D. P for Paul. D for Denmark. E for America. Prasuti, Akuti, and last one you should know.
Diti.
Huh?
Akruti.
Prasuti, Akuti, and P-A-D. D is who?
Diti.
Diti.
No.
Deva.
Devahuti.
Deva.
Okay. So Prasuti, Akuti, and Devahuti. So those are the three sisters. He also has a brother. There were 5 sons of Swayambhuva Manu, right? So there were 5 children of Swayambhuva Manu. So we had 3 daughters we listed. 1 son we listed, Uttanpad, and he has a brother known as Priyavrata. Okay. All right. So anyway, so we know that from Uttanpad's son is Dhruva Maharaj, right? And then in the lineage of Dhruva Maharaj, sons and sons and sons and sons of Dhruva Maharaj, then there comes a king known as Prithu Maharaj. Okay. So when we say Prithu Maharaj, what is the thing that we remember about Prithu Maharaj? What do we know about Prithu Maharaj? What is he famous for? Prithu Maharaj. Prithu. He did 100 horse sacrifices, and Indra used to come and steal away the horse. Right?
Indra used to take away the horse. Last one, he could not finish it.
Yeah, 99. So he stopped at 99 when Brahma came and said, then Indra was the Acharya of Apasampradaya, because Indra came dressed as a sannyasi. So from that time, fake sannyasis were born. The concept of a fake sannyasi was born. Right? So he's famous for, Prithu Maharaj is famous for that. And then, so when he was doing his sacrifices, then at that time he had his son, his name was Vijitsva. And it was his son, because father was sitting in the sacrifices and son was guarding their sacrificial horse. So the son used to go after Indra. And then he would see that, oh, this is sannyasi, so he would let him go, right? And then Indra also used to disappear in darkness, and suddenly he had mystic powers, so he could do that. So he could not follow. But then in the end, Indra gets very pleased by him because he did not kill him and saw that it's Indra, but in the guise of a sannyasi, so he did not. So that showed a very high level of character on part of Vijitsva. So then Indra became very pleased, and he gave him the art. He taught him the art of how you can make your body disappear. Antardhan is the word, right? So that's why Vijitsva is also known as Antardhan. So, anyway, now this guy, Vijitsva, so after Prithu Maharaj leaves everything and goes to the forest, then he puts Vijitsva on the throne to rule. Now, Vijitsva is so nice at heart that he doesn't like to ask people to pay the taxes. Now, if people don't pay taxes, how is the king going to maintain the army and things like that, right? So his mind was not in doing all those kingdom and ruling kind of things. So he just gives everything to his son. He gives everything to son, and then he goes to the forest. And so then Vijitsva goes, and Vijitsva's son who then started ruling was Havidhan. His name was Havidhan, right? And then Havidhan's son was a king known as Barhishat, and it's a very famous, the chapters on King Barhishat. So I kind of just wanted to give you a little bit of background because I'm going to talk today about Barhishat. And so Maharaj Barhishat was very good at doing karmkandi activities. He would do lots of sacrifices to gain this and gain that, right? He had, kusha grass and all that. He had some powers. He got things done. He got this kusha grass pointing in one direction and all that. So because of all these activities that he was doing, he also came to be known as Prachin Barhi. So sometimes when you hear the word Prachin Barhi, then it is nothing but King Barhishat that we are talking about. And so he gets married. And so when he's married to a lady, he was actually ordered by Brahma, I think, to get married, and to a beautiful lady. She was the daughter of Samudra, the king of ocean. And she was so beautiful that at the time of the wedding, all the demigods had come to attend the wedding. They used to come. They were invited in those days. And so Agni got so attracted to the wife, right? Look, so you can imagine how, your senses can take you so much astray. That here you have been invited to a wedding, some woman is getting married to a man, and you get attracted to her. So like that, okay? So anyway, he gets married to this, and it's a very, very beautiful wife. And then he indulges a lot in all these activities of karmkandi activities, right? So then he has this wife, and the wife has 10 children. And those 10 children are known as prachetas. So you also hear people talking about prachetas. Who are the prachetas? So that you can understand that these are the prachetas. Okay. So the prachetas, so then the king says to the prachetas that, he orders them to get married. You have to get married now. So these days, when a father asks the son to get married, the son will start going to the beauty parlor to get his hair done and start reaching out to, singles places and all that to get a wife. But in those days, when your father told you to get married, what sons did was they went and started doing austerities. Why? Because we are talking about sacrifices. And so they were doing sacrifices, and this is a sacrifice. And they know that entering into Grihastha Ashram, so Grihastha Ashram is also a sacrifice. We talked about sacrifices, right? So Grihasthas also do the sacrifices. They sacrifice their senses in the controlled environment of a Grihastha Ashram. So you have to learn how to control your senses, especially if you're the son of a king, right? Because you'll be surrounded with opulence, beautiful women, and so on and so forth. So you have to be careful. So they go off to do this. And while they were all doing, so imagine the sons are doing tapasya. They are under the ocean. They're doing tapasya underneath that. And then their father is indulging in karmkandi activities. He's doing this sacrifice, that sacrifice, and things like that. So then Narad Muni, who is our, quintessential guru, he has pity on the king because he sees that he's getting so much entangled. So then he comes to Prachin Bahari, and then he gives him some knowledge, right? And What was the sentence today?
Ignorance is the cause of our
Bondage.
Knowledge is the cause of
And
liberation.
the cause of
Knowledge is the
knowledge is the call of our liberation, right?
liberation.
So we will see. Yeah. Then Ankur Goel has a question. Why do king needs army in those days? It was always one king ruling the land. Yes, there was one king ruling the land, but there were sub-kings. And as I mentioned over here, Vijayasva did not like to levy taxes. So there were people also who did not want to give taxes. So you needed to control them. So army was required for that purposes also. In fact, if we listen to Kunti Maharani's prayers in the Srimad Bhagavatam, there when she's praying to Krishna and she's saying, we need you even more now when all these kings have gone against us. So I was very curious, like, how what is the meaning of kings being against them? Is he not the emperor of the world now? He has won the Mahabharata. He has won over everybody. So yes, he did win over everybody, but not everybody surrendered sweetly to Yudhishthira. So that enmity is still there. They're just waiting for an opportunity to strike back again. So a king has to have his army always. There can be a rebellion coming from within your own kingdom, from within your own family. The son can go against the father, and so on and so forth. So like that. Okay. So let me see if I have that. So this is from the fourth canto. Fourth canto, and this is a conversation happening between Sage Maitrey, and you know that in the Bhagavatam there are conversations within conversations within conversations. So let me start sharing my screen here with you, and we'll just look at it. So this will go on for quite some time. So just fasten your seatbelt. If you like to hear a story, the story is coming here to all of you, and we'll get going. Okay, so the great sage Maitrey continued speaking to Vidura. So Maitrey is speaking to Vidura. He's saying, my dear Vidura. Who was Vidura?
the uncle of the Pandavas.
Pandavas, correct, for 500 points. My dear Vidura, in this way, Lord Shiva instructed the sons of King Barhishat. So now when these Prachetas, who are the sons of King Barhishat or Prachin Bari, it's the same person, right? So when these Prachetas were going out to do their austerities, etc., they are met with Shiva, and Shiva gives them some very nice instructions in the Bhagavad-gita just prior to this chapter, which is also known as Shiva Gita. And there in that Shiva Gita, when you read the Shiva Gita, you come to know that Shivji is actually a very devoted and dedicated devotee of Lord Krishna. So he teaches all them on how to do Krishna. So, and that's why it's very important for people to read the Srimad Bhagavatam, because unnecessarily people fight between Vishnu versus Shiva and they have doubts and things like that. So it's very important. The Bhagavatam that way is a very mature literature. So, so in this way, Lord Shiva instructed the sons of King Barishat. You can go and read chapter 24 if you want to. The sons of the king also worshipped Lord Shiva with great devotion and respect. Finally, Lord Shiva became invisible to the princes. All the Pracheta princes suddenly stood in the water for 10,000 years and recited the prayers given to them by Lord Shiva. When the princes were undergoing severe austerities in the water, their father was performing different types of fruitive activities. At this time, the great sage Narada, master and teacher of all spiritual life, became very compassionate upon the king and decided to instruct him about spiritual life. So here, without even doing Tadvidi Paripatina Pariprashnina Sevaye, the king is getting such a fantastic spiritual master. So sometimes a spiritual master out of causeless mercy will give you knowledge, as is happening in this case. Narad Muni asked King Prachina Barhishat, my dear king, what do you desire to achieve by performing these fruitive activities? The aim of life is to get rid of all miseries and enjoy happiness, but these two things cannot be realized by fruitive activities. So what are the two things that you cannot get by doing fruitive activities, by karmakandi activities? What are the two things that you cannot get?
Happiness and getting rid of misery.
Getting rid of all misery, right? That's very, very important. The king replied, O great soul, Narada, my intelligence is entangled in fruitive activities. Therefore, I do not know the ultimate goal of life. Kindly instruct me in pure knowledge so that I can get out of the entanglement of fruitive activities. So where did he want to get out of?
Fruitive activities.
From fruitive activities. From the entanglement. It's a jal. Those who are interested only in so-called dutiful life, namely remaining as a householder entangled by sons and a wife, and searching after wealth, think that such things are life's ultimate goal. Such people simply wander in different types of bodies throughout this material existence without finding the ultimate goal of life. Right? The great sage Narada said, Saint Narada said, O ruler of the citizens, my dear king, please see in the sky those animals which you have sacrificed without compassion, because he's doing karmakandi activities and you have to sacrifice animals there, and without mercy in the sacrificial arena. All these animals are awaiting your death so that they can avenge the injuries you have inflicted upon them. After you die, they will angrily pierce your body with iron horns. In this connection, I wish to narrate an old story connected with the character of a king called Puranjana. Please try to hear me with great attention. Right? And this story has to be heard with great attention. Okay? So what is the name of the king whose story Narada is going to tell?
Puranjana.
Puranjana.
And to whom is he telling the story? Prachin Barhi or Barhishad, right? And Barhishad, remember, is a descendant of Dhruv Maharaj. Right? I drew the lineage there, right? So he's coming from there. So my dear king, once in the past lived a king named Puranjana, who was celebrated for his great activities. He had a friend named Avigyata, or the unknown one. No one could understand the activities of Avigyata. King Puranjan began to search for a suitable place to live. Should I live here? Should I live there? And thus he traveled all over the world. Even after a great deal of traveling, he could not find a place just to his liking. Finally, he became morose and disappointed. Who else do you know became morose and disappointed after doing a lot of hard work? Somebody.
Arjun.
After doing a lot of hard work.
Oh.
Arjun didn't do any hard work, at least from the beginning of Bhagavad-gita. Vyasdeva, after translating the Vedas, after writing the Bhagavad-gita, after writing the Mahabharata, he became morose and disappointed, right? So King Puranjan had unlimited desires for sense enjoyment. Consequently, he traveled all over the world to find a place where all his desires could be fulfilled. Unfortunately, he found a feeling of insufficiency everywhere. Once while wandering in this way, he saw on the southern side of the Himalayas, in a place named Bharatvarsha, India, a city that had 9 gates all about and was characterized by all auspicious facilities. That city was surrounded by walls and parks, and within it were towers, canals, windows, and outlets. The houses there were decorated with domes made of gold, silver, and iron. So what were the domes made up of in this city?
Gold, silver, and iron.
Okay, and where was this city?
Yeah.
India.
Bharatvarsha,
Right, Bharatvarsha.
southern side of the Himalayas.
The floors of the house in that city were made of sapphire, crystal, diamonds, pearls, emeralds, and rubies. Because of the luster of the houses in the capital, the city was compared to the celestial town named as Bhogavati. In that city, there were many. Bhogavati is a city up in the upper planets. I'm forgetting where, but I remember reading about it. In that city, there are many assembly houses, street crossings, streets, restaurants, gambling houses, markets, resting places, flags, festoons, and beautiful plaques. All these surrounded the city, right? On the outskirts of that city were many beautiful trees and creepers encircling a nice lake. Also surrounding that lake were many groups of birds and bees that were always chanting and humming. The branches of the trees standing on the bank of the lake received particles of water carried by the spring air from the falls coming down from the icy mountain. So imagine beautiful mountains, icy mountains, water coming from there, There's a lake, there are trees around them. They are getting sparkled by water. There are bees, there are birds, there are flowers, there are creepers. How much more beautiful can this be? In such an atmosphere, even the animals of the forest became non-violent and non-envious like the great sages. So, who are the non-envious?
The
Yes,
animals.
birds,
The great
Animals.
animals and
And the
birds.
sages.
The sages, right? Yeah, it's the sages who are non-envious. So that's why it's one of the characteristics of a sage that they are not envious of anything. So consequently, the animals do not attack anyone. Over and above everything was the cooing of the cuckoos, coo. So like, right? Any passenger passing along the pathway was invited by that atmosphere to take rest in that nice garden, right? So your eyes are going to wander and see this beautiful place. While wandering here and there in that wonderful garden, King Puranjan suddenly came in contact with a very beautiful woman who was walking there without any engagement. She had 10 servants with her, and each servant had hundreds of wives accompanying him. So imagine the scene. The woman was protected on all sides by a 5-hooded snake. How many hoods did the snake have?
5 hooded.
5. She was very beautiful and young, and she appeared to be very anxious to find a suitable husband.
Wow.
The woman's nose, teeth, and forehead were all very beautiful. Her ears were equally very beautiful and were bedecked with dazzling earrings. The waist and hips of the woman were very, very beautiful. She was dressed in a yellow sari with a golden belt. While she walked, her ankle bells rang. She appeared exactly like a denizen of the heavens. With the end of her sari, the woman was trying to cover her breasts, which were equally round and well placed side by side. She again and again tried to cover them out of shyness while she walked exactly like a great elephant. Puranjana, the hero, became attracted by the eyebrows and smiling face of this very beautiful girl and was immediately pierced by the arrows of her lusty desires. When she smiled shyly, she looked very beautiful to Puranjana, who, although a hero, could not refrain from addressing her. My dear lotus eyes, look at the language. My dear lotus eyes, kindly explain to me, where you are, Kamal Naini, right? Please kindly explain to me where you are coming from, who you are, and whose daughter you are. You appear very chaste. What is the purpose of your coming here? What are you trying to do? Please explain all these things to me. My dear lotus eye, who are those 11 strong bodyguards with you? And who are those 10 specific servants? Who are those women following the 10 servants? And who is that snake that is preceding you? My dear beautiful girl, you are exactly like the goddess of fortune or the wife of Lord Shiva, or the goddess of learning, the wife of Lord Brahma. Although you must be one of them, I see that you are loitering in this forest. Indeed, you are as silent as the great sages. Is it that you are searching after your own husband? Whoever your husband may be, simply by understanding that you are so faithful to him, he will come to possess all opulences. I think you must be the goddess of fortune, but I do not see the lotus flower in your hand. So see, goddess of fortune has lotus flower in her hand. Therefore, I'm asking you, where have you thrown that lotus? So look at the language, right? Oh, greatly fortunate one, it appears that you are none of the women I have mentioned, because I see that your feet are touching the ground. So, when the devtas are there, devtas' feet don't touch the ground. Like you see them sitting on their vahan, their feet are never touching the ground. But if you're the same woman of this planet, you can, like the goddess of fortune, who accompanied by Lord Vishnu, increases the beauty of the Vaikuntha planets. You can also increase the beauty of this city by associating with me. You should understand that I'm a great hero and a very powerful king on this planet. Certainly, your glancing upon me today has very much agitated my mind. Your smile, which is full of shyness, but at the same time lusty, is agitating the most powerful Cupid within me. Therefore, O most beautiful one, I ask you to be merciful upon me. My dear girl, your face is so beautiful with your nice eyebrows and eyes and with your bluish hair scattered about. In addition, very sweet sounds are coming from your mouth. Nonetheless, you are so covered with shyness that you do not see me face to face. I therefore request you, my dear girl, to smile and kindly raise your head to see me. Narad continued, my dear king, when Puranjana became so attracted and impatient to touch the girl and enjoy her, the girl also became attracted by his words and accepted his request by smiling. By this time, she was certainly attracted by the king. The girl said, O best of human beings, I do not know who has begotten me. I cannot speak to you perfectly about this, nor do I know the names or the origin of the associates with me. O great hero, we only know that we are existing in this place. We do not know what will come after. Indeed, we are so foolish that we do not care to understand who has created this beautiful place for our residence. Like typical people in an opulent land enjoying. My dear gentlemen, all these men and women with me are known as my friends, and the snake, who always remains awake, protects this city even during my sleeping hours. So much I know. I do not know anything beyond this. O killer of the enemy, you have somehow or other come here. This is certainly great fortune for me. I wish all auspicious things for you. You have a great desire to satisfy your senses, and all my friends and I shall try our best in all respect to fulfill your desires. My dear Lord, I have just arranged the city of 9 gates for you so that you can have all kinds of sense gratification. You may live here for 100 years and everything for your sense gratification will be supplied. How can I expect to unite with others who are neither conversant about sex or capable of knowing how to enjoy life while living or after death? Such foolish persons are like animals because they do not know the process of sense enjoyment in this life and after death. The woman continued, in this material life world, a householder's life brings all kinds of happiness in religion, economic development, sense gratification, and the begetting of children, sons and grandsons. After that, one may desire liberation as well as material reputation. The householder can appreciate the results of sacrifices which enable him to gain promotion to the superior planetary systems. All this material happiness is practically unknown to the transcendentalists. They cannot even imagine such happiness. The woman continued, according to the authorities, the householder life is pleasing not only to oneself, but to all the forefathers, demigods, great sages, saintly persons, and everyone else. A householder life is thus beneficial. Oh, my dear hero, who in this world will not accept a husband like you? You are so famous, you are magnanimous, you are beautiful, and so easily gotten. O mighty arm, who in this world will not be attracted by your arms, which are just like the bodies of serpents? Actually, you relieve the distress of husbandless women like us by your attractive smile and your aggressive mercy. We think that you are traveling on the surface of earth just to benefit us only. The great sage Narad continued, my dear king. So who is the king that Narada is talking to?
Pranjana. No.
I don't know how to say that name.
Supraj. P-R-A. Mataji, I don't know how to.
Preacher.
Prachin Barhi.
Prachin Barhi.
Prachin.
Yeah, he's talking to Prachin Barhi, right? And and then this one is Puranjana, right? So Puranjana
Yes.
is in the story, right? So Puranjana is not a real, right? So it's telling about the story of Puranjana. So the great sage Narad continued, my dear king, these two, the man and the woman, those two, the men and women, supporting one another through mutual understanding, entered that city and enjoyed life for 100 years. Many professional singers used to sing about the glories of King Puranjan and his glorious activities. When it was too hot in the summer, he used to enter a reservoir of water. He would surround himself with many women and enjoy their company.
Wow.
Of the 9 gates in that city, 7 were on the surface and 2 were subterranean. A total of 9 doors were constructed and these led to different places. All the gates were used by the city's governor. My dear king, of the 9 doors, 7 led towards the eastern side, 1 led towards the northern side, 1 led towards the southern side, and 2 led towards the western side. I shall try to give names of these different doors. The 2 gates, namely Khadyota and Avirmukhi, were situated facing the eastern side, but they were constructed in one place. Through those 2 gates, the king used to go to the city of Vibhrajita, accompanied by a friend whose name was Dyuman. Similarly, in the east, there were 2 sets of gates known as Nalini and Nalini, and these were also constructed in one place. Through these gates, the king, accompanied by a friend named Avadhuta, used to go to the city of Saurabha. The 5th gate, situated on the eastern side, was named Mukhya, or the chief. Through this gate, accompanied by his friend named Rasagya and Vipana, he used to visit 2 places known as Bahudan and Apana. The southern gate of the city was known as Pitrihu, and through that gate, King Puranjan used to visit the city named as Dakshin Panchala, accompanied by his friend Shruddha-devi. On the northern side was a gate named as Devahu. Through that gate, King Puranjan used to go with his friend Shruddha-devi to a place known as Uttar Panchala. On the western side was a gate named as Asuri. Through that gate, King Puranjana used to go to the city of Gramaka, accompanied by his friend Durmada. Another gate on the western side was known as Niritti, and Puranjana used to go through this gate to the place known as Vaishasha and accompanied by his friend Lubthaka. Of the many inhabitants of the city, there were 2 persons known as Nirvak and Peshakrit. Although King Puranjan was the ruler of citizens who possessed eyes, he unfortunately used to associate with these blind men. What was the name of the blind men?
Nirvak and Peshashkrit.
Nirvak and Peshakrit. Accompanied by them, he used to go here and there and perform various activities. Sometimes he used to go to his private home with one of his chief servants, the mind, who was named Vishuchina. At that time, illusion, satisfaction, and happiness used to be produced from his wife and children. Being thus entangled in different types of mental concoction and engaged in fruitive activities, King Puranjana came completely under the control of material intelligence and thus was cheated. So under whose control did he come?
Material intelligence.
Yes. And then what happened?
He was cheated.
Was cheated, right? So if you come under the control of material intelligence, what's going to happen?
He will be cheated.
Be cheated. Indeed, he used to fulfill all the desires of his wife, the queen. When the queen drank liquor, King Puranja also engaged in drinking. When the queen dined, he also used to dine with her. And when she chewed, King Puranjana also used to chew along with him. When queen sang, he also sang. Similarly, when the queen cried, he also cried. When the queen laughed, he also laughed. When the queen talked loosely, he also talked loosely. When the queen walked, the king walked behind her. When the queen would stand still, the king would also stand still. When the queen would lie down in the bed, he would also follow and lie down with her. When the queen sat, he would also sit. When the queen heard something, he would follow her to hear the same thing. When the queen saw something, the queen would also look at it. When the queen smelled something, the king would also follow her to smell the same thing. When the queen touched something, the king would also touch it. When the dear queen was lamenting, the poor king also had to follow her in lamentation. In the same way, when the queen felt enjoyment, he also enjoyed. And when the queen was satisfied, the king also felt satisfaction. In this way, King Puranjan was captivated by his nice wife and was thus cheated. Indeed, he became cheated in his whole experience in the material world. How many years did he spend with his wife?
100.
100 years.
Even against that poor, foolish king's desire, he remained under the control of his wife, just like a pet animal that dances according to the order of his master. So there is more to this story, but I need to go. Should I go? You want to hear more story?
Where are you going, Mataji?
Where are you going? I'm going to the city of 9 gates. Okay.
Oh.
So going on to the next chapter. The great sage Narada continued, my dear king, once upon a time. So he's there, lived 100 years. King Puranjana took upon his great bow and equipped with gold armor and a quiver of unlimited arrows and accompanied by 11 commanders, he sat on his chariot driven by 5 swift horses and went to the forest known as Prastha. He took with him in that chariot 2 explosive arrows. The chariot itself was situated on 2 wheels and 1 revolving axle. On the chariot were 3 flags, 1 rein, 1 chariot driver, 1 sitting place, 2 poles to which the harness was fixed, 5 weapons, and 7 coverings. The chariot moved in 5 different styles, and 5 obstacles lay before it. All the decorations of the chariot were made of gold. It was almost impossible for King Puranjan to give up the company of his queen, even for a moment. Nonetheless, on that day, being very much inspired by the desire to hunt, he took up his bow and arrow with great pride and went to the forest, not caring for his wife. At that time, King Puranjan was very much influenced by demoniac propensities. Because of this, his heart became very hard and merciless, and with sharp arrows, he killed many innocent animals in the forest, taking no consideration. If a king is too attracted to eating flesh, he may, according to the directions of the revealed scriptures on sacrificial performances, go to the forest and kill some animals that are recommended for killing. One is not allowed to kill animals unnecessarily or without restrictions. The Vedas regulate animal killings to stop the extravagance of foolish men influenced by the more of passion and ignorance. Narad Muni continued to speak to King Prachina Bharishat, my dear king, any person who works according to the directions of the Vedic scriptures does not become involved in fruitive activities. Otherwise, a person who acts whimsically falls down due to false prestige. Thus, he became involved in the laws of nature, which was composed of 3 qualities, goodness, passion, and ignorance. What are they called in Sanskrit? Goodness, passion, and ignorance?
Sattva, Kama.
Sattva, Raja, Tamo,
Raja.
Tamo, Raja, right. In this way, a living entity becomes devoid of his real intelligence and becomes perpetually lost in the cycle of birth and death. Thus, he goes up and down from a microbe in stool to a high position in the Brahmaloka planet. When King Puranjana was hunting in this way, many animals within the forest lost their lives with great pain, being pierced by the sharp arrowheads. Upon seeing these devastating, ghastly activities performed by the king, all the people who were merciful by nature became very unhappy. Such merciful persons could not tolerate seeing all this killing. In this way, King Puranjan killed many animals, including rabbits, boars, buffalo, bison, black deer, porcupines, and other game animals. After killing and killing, the king became very tired. After this, the king, very much fatigued, hungry, and thirsty, returned to his royal palace. After returning, he took a bath and had appropriate dinner. Then he took rest, and thus he became freed from all restlessness. After this, King Puranjana decorated his body with suitable ornaments. He also smeared scented sandalwood pulp over his body and put on flower garlands. In this way, he became completely refreshed. After this, he began to search out his queen. After taking his dinner and having his thirst and hunger satisfied, King Puranjana felt some joy within his heart. Instead of being elevated to a higher consciousness, he became captivated by Cupid and was moved by a desire to find his wife, who kept him satisfied in his household life. At that time, King Puranjana was a little anxious, and he inquired from the household women, "My dear beautiful women, are you and your mistress all very happy like before or not?" King Puranjana said, "I do not understand why my household paraphernalia does not attract me as before. I think that if there is neither a mother nor a devoted wife at home, the home is like a chariot without wheels. Where is the fool who will sit down on such unworkable chariot? Kindly let me know the whereabouts of the beautiful woman who always saves me when I'm drowning in the ocean of danger. By giving me good intelligence at every step, she always saves me." All the women addressed the king, "O master of the citizens, we do not know why your dear wife has taken on this sort of existence. O killer of enemies, kindly look. She's lying on the ground without bedding. We cannot understand why she's acting in this way." The great sage Narada continued, "My dear King Prachinabarhi, as soon as King Puranjana saw his queen lying on the ground, he appeared like a mendicant. He immediately became bewildered. The king, with aggrieved mind, began to speak to his wife with very pleasing words. Although he was filled with regret and tried to pacify her, he could not see any symptom of anger caused by love within the heart of his beloved wife. Because the king was very expert in flattery, he began to pacify his queen very slowly. First, he touched her 2 feet, then embraced her nicely, seating her on his lap, and he began to speak as follows. King Puranjan said, "My dear beautiful wife, when a master accepts a servant as his own man, but does not punish him for his offenses, the servant must be considered unfortunate. My dear slender maiden, when a master chastises his servant, the servant should accept this as a great mercy. One who becomes angry must be very foolish not to know that such is the duty of his friend. My dear wife, your teeth are very beautifully set, and your attractive features make you appear very thoughtful. Kindly give up your anger, be merciful upon me, and please smile upon me with loving attachment. When I see a smile on your beautiful face, and when I see your hair, which is very beautiful as the color blue, and see your raised nose and hear your sweet talk, you will become more beautiful to me and thus attract me and oblige me. You are my most respected mistress. O hero's wife, kindly tell me if someone has offended you. I'm prepared to give such a person punishment as long as he does not belong to the Brahmana caste. But for the servant of Muraripu, Krishna, I excuse no one within or beyond these three worlds. No one can freely move after offending you, for I am prepared to punish him. My dear wife, until this day, I have never seen on your face without tilak decorations, nor have I seen you so morose and without luster or affection. Nor have I seen your two nice breasts wet with tears from your eyes. Nor have I ever before seen your lips, which are ordinary as red as the bimba fruit, without their reddish hue. My dear queen, due to my sinful desires, I went to the forest to hunt without asking you. Therefore, I must admit that I have offended you. Nonetheless, thinking of me as your most intimate subordinate, you should still be very much pleased with me. Factually, I'm very much bereaved, but being pierced by the arrow of Cupid, I am feeling lusty. But where is the beautiful woman who would give her lusty husband and refuse to unite with him? So King Puranjana says this. The great sage Narad continued, my dear king, after bewildering her husband in different ways and bringing him under her control, the wife of King Puranjana gave him all satisfaction and enjoyed sex life with him. The queen took her bath and dressed herself nicely with all auspicious garments and ornaments. After taking food and becoming completely satisfied, she returned to the king. Upon seeing her beautifully decorated, attractive face, the king welcomed her with all devotion. Queen Puranjani embraced the king, and the king also responded by embracing her shoulders. In this way, in a solitary place, they enjoyed joking words. Thus, King Puranjana became very much captivated by his beautiful wife and deviated from his good sense. He forgot that the passing of days and nights meant that his span of life was being reduced without profit. In this way, increasingly overwhelmed by illusion, King Puranjana, although advanced in consciousness, remained always lying down with his head on the pillow of his wife's arms. In this way, he considered woman to be his ultimate life and soul. Becoming thus overwhelmed by the mode of ignorance, he could not understand the meaning of self-realization, whether regarding his own self or the Supreme Personality of Godhead. My dear King Prachina Parishad, in this way, King Puranjana, with his heart full of lust and sinful reactions, began to enjoy sex with his wife, and in this way, his new life and youth expired in half a moment. The great sage Narada then addressed King Prachina Parishad, "O one whose lifespan is great, Virat." In this way, King Puranjan begot 1,100 sons within the womb of his wife Puranjani. However, in this business, he passed away half of his lifespan. O Prajapati, King Prachina Parishad, in this way, King Puranjana also begot 110 daughters. All of these were equally glorified like the father and the mother. Their behavior was gentle and they possessed magnanimity and other good qualities. After this, King Puranjana, king of the Panchala country, in order to increase the descendants of his paternal family, married his sons with qualified wives and married his daughters with qualified husbands. Of these many sons, each produced hundreds and hundreds of grandsons. In this way, the whole city of Panchala became overcrowded by these sons and grandsons of King Puranjana. These sons and grandsons were virtually plunderers of King Puranjana's riches, including his home, treasury, servants, secretaries, and all other paraphernalia. Puranjana's attachment for these things were very deep-rooted. The great sage Narada continued, "My dear King Prachina Parishad, like you, King Puranjana also became implicated in so many desires. Thus he worshipped demigods, forefathers, and social leaders with various sacrifices, which were all very ghastly because they were inspired by the desire to kill animals. Thus King Puranjana, being attached to fruitive activities, karma kandya, as well as kith and king, and being obsessed with polluted consciousness, eventually arrived at that point, not very much liked by those who are overly attached to material things. O king in Gandharva Loka." So now, another place. In Gandharva Loka, there was a king named as Chandavega. Under him, there were 360 very powerful Gandharva soldiers. Along with Chandavega, there were many female Gandharvis, as there were soldiers. How many soldiers were there?
360.
360. So Gandharvas and then 360 Gandharvis. And all of them repeatedly plundered all the paraphernalia for sense enjoyment. When King Gandharva Raj or Chandavega and his followers began to plunder the city of Puranjana, a snake with 5 hoods began to defend the city. The 5-hooded serpent, the superintendent and protector of the city of King Puranjana, fought with the Gandharvas for 100 years. He fought alone with all of them, although they numbered 720. Because he had to fight alone with so many servants, so many soldiers, all of whom were great warriors, the serpent with 5 hoods became very weak. Seeing that his most intimate friend was weakening, King Puranjana and his friends and citizens living within the city all became very anxious. King Puranjana collected taxes in the city known as Panchala and thus was able to engage in sexual indulgence. Being completely under the control of women, he could not understand that his life was passing away and that he was reaching the point of death. My dear King Prachina Parishad, Narad Muni is saying, at this time, the daughter of the formidable time, so all this is happening at that time, now this daughter of formidable time also comes, was seeking her husband throughout the 3 worlds. Although no one agreed to accept her, she still came. The daughter of time, which is Jara, was very unfortunate. Jara also means old age, right? So the daughter of time is Jara, was very unfortunate. Consequently, she was known as Durbhag, ill-fated. However, she was once pleased with a great king, and because the king accepted her, she granted him a great benediction. When I once came to this earth from Brahmaloka, the highest planetary system, the daughter of time, wandering all over the universe, met Narad Muni. Knowing me to be an avowed brahmachari, she became lusty and proposed that I accept her. The great sage Narada continued, when I refused to accept her request, she became very angry at me and cursed me severely. Because I refused her request, she said that I would not be able to stay in one place for a long time. So now this explains why Narad Muni goes from one planet to another planet to another planet to another planet, right? He has been cursed by this daughter of time. After she was disappointed, right? After she was thus disappointed by me, with my permission, she approached the king of the Yavanas, whose name was Bhay, or fear, and she accepted him as her husband. Approaching the king of the Yavanas, Kala Kanya. So this daughter of time is Kala Kanya. And who has Kala Kanya married? What's the name of her husband?
Not Prajana.
Bhai.
Bhay, exactly right. Yeah. So she has married the king of Yavanas, whose name was Bhay, right? So Kala Kanya goes and marries him. So then after she married him, she addressed him as a great hero, saying, my dear son, you are the best of the untouchables. I am in love with you and I want you as my husband. I know that no one is baffled if he makes friends with you. One who does not give charity according to the customs or injunctions of the scripture, and one who does not accept charity in that way are considered to be in the mode of ignorance. Such persons follow the path of the foolish. Surely they must lament at the end. Kalakanya continued, O gentlemen, I am now present before you to serve you. Please accept me and thus show me mercy. It is a gentleman's greatest duty to be compassionate about a person who is distressed. After hearing the statement of Kalakanya, the daughter of time, the king of the Yamanas began to smile and devise a mean for executing his confidential duty on behalf of Providence. He thus addressed Kalakanya as follows. The king of the Yamanas replied, after much consideration, I have arrived at a husband for you. Actually, as far as everyone is concerned, you are inauspicious and mischievous. Since no one likes you, how can anyone accept you as a wife? This world is a product of fruitive activities. Therefore, you may imperceptibly attack people in general. Helped by my soldiers, you can kill them without opposition. The king of the Yavanas continued, here is my brother Prajwara. I now accept you as my sister. I shall employ both of you as well as my dangerous soldiers to act imperceptibly within the world. So people don't see it, but this Kalakanya, right? So Kal, time also brings changes in our, and we do not see. It is imperceptible. Slowly it happens till 10 years later, you say, oh, what happened? Everything changed like that, right? These are imperceptible changes of the material world. So the great sage Narada continued, my dear King Prachina Bharati, after the king of the Yamanas, whose name is fear itself, as well as Prajwara, Kalakanya, and his soldiers began to travel all over the world. Once the dangerous soldier attacked the city of Puranjana. So now these are coming to city of Puranjana with great force. Although the city was full of paraphernalia for sense gratification, it was being protected by the old serpent. Gradually, Kalakanya, with the help of dangerous soldiers, attacked all the inhabitants of Puranjana city and thus rendered them useless for all purposes. When Kalakanya, daughter of time, attacked the body, the dangerous soldiers of the king of Yamanas entered the city through different gates. They then began to give severe trouble to all the citizens. When the city was thus endangered by the soldiers and Kalakanya, King Puranjana became overly absorbed in affection with his family, was placed in difficulty by the attack of Yavanraj and Kalakanya. When King Puranjan was embraced by Kalakanya, he gradually lost all his beauty. Having been too much addicted to sex, he became poor in intelligence and lost all his opulence. Being bereft of all possessions, he was conquered forcibly by the Gandharvas and the Yavanas. King Puranjana then saw that everything in his town was scattered and that his sons, grandsons, servants, and ministers were all gradually opposing him. He also noted that his wife was becoming cold and indifferent. When King Puranjana saw that all his family members, relatives, followers, servants, secretaries, and everyone else had turned against him, he certainly became very anxious, but he could not counteract the situation because he was thoroughly overwhelmed by Kalakanya. The objects of enjoyment became stale by the influence of Kalakanya. Due to the continuance of his lusty desires, King Puranjan became very poor in everything. Thus, he did not understand the aim of life. He was still very affectionate toward his wife and children, and he worried about maintaining them. The city of King Puranjana was overcome by the Gandharva and Yavana soldiers, and although the king had no desire to leave the city, he was circumstantially forced to do so, for it was smashed by Kalakanya. Under the circumstances, the older brother of Yavanraj, known as Prajwara, set fire to the city to please his younger brother, whose other name is fear itself, right? Yavanraj or Bhaya, as we saw. When the city was set ablaze, all the citizens and servants of the king, as well as all the family members, sons, grandsons, wives, and other relatives, were within the fire. King Puranjan thus became very unhappy. The city superintendent of police, the servant, saw that the citizens were being attacked by Kalikanya, and he became very aggrieved to see his own residence set ablaze after being attacked by the Yavanas. As a serpent living within a cavity of a tree wishes to leave when there is forest fire, so the city's police superintendent, the snake, wished to leave the city due to the fire's severe heat. The limbs of the serpent's body were slackened by the Gandharvas and Yavana soldiers who had thoroughly defeated his bodily strength. When he attempted to leave the body, he was checked by his enemies. Being thus baffled in his attempt, he began to cry loudly. King Puranjan then began to think of his daughters, sons, grandsons, daughters-in-law, sons-in-law, servants, and other associates, as well as his house, his household paraphernalia, and his little accumulation of wealth. King Puranjana was overly attached to his family and conceptions of I and mine. Because he was overly attracted to his wife, he was already quite poverty-stricken. At the time of separation, he became very sorry. King Puranjan was anxiously thinking, alas, my wife is encumbered by so many children. When I pass from this body, how will she be able to maintain all these family members? Alas, she is greatly harassed by thoughts of family maintenance. King Puranjan then began to think of his past dealings with his wife. He recalled that his wife would not take her dinner until he had finished his, that he would not take her bath until she had finished his, and that she had always very much attached to him, so much so that if he would sometimes become angry and chastise her, he would simply remain silent and tolerate his misbehavior. King Puranjan continued thinking how, when he was in a state of bewilderment, his wife would give him good sound counsel, and how she would become aggrieved when he was away from home. Although he was the mother of so many sons and heroes, the king still feared that she would not be able to maintain the responsibility of household affairs. King Puranjan continued worrying, after I pass from this world, how will my sons and daughters, who are now fully dependent on me, live and continue their lives? Their position will be similar to that of passengers aboard a ship wrecked in the midst of an ocean. Although King Puranjana should not have lamented over the fate of his wife and children, he nonetheless did so due to his miserly intelligence. In the meantime, Yavan Raj, whose name was Fear itself, immediately drew near to arrest him. When the Yavanas were taking King Puranjan away to their place, binding him like an animal, the king's followers became greatly aggrieved. While they lamented, they were forced to go along with him. The serpent, who had already been arrested by the soldiers of Yavan Raj and was out of the city, began to follow his master along with the others. As soon as they all left the city, it was immediately dismantled and smashed to dust. When King Puranjana was being dragged with great force by the powerful Yavana, out of his gross ignorance, he could not remember his friend and well-wisher, the super soul. And that most unkind King Puranjana had killed many animals in various sacrifices. Now, taking advantage of these opportunities, all these animals began to pierce him with their horns. It was as though he was being cut to pieces by axes. During his contaminated association with women, a living entity like King Puranjana eternally suffers all the pangs of material existence and remains in the dark region of material life, bereft of all remembrance for many, many years. King Puranjana gave up his body while remembering his wife. What do you think is going to happen?
He became her in the next life.
He'll become a wife in the next life, right? Which other story tells you of that? Somebody thought of someone and became that person.
King Bharat.
King Bharat. Correct. Yep. So consequently, in his next life, he became a very beautiful and well-situated woman. He took his birth as a daughter of King Vidarbha in the very house of the king. It was fixed that Vidarbha, or Vaidarbhi, daughter of King Vidarbha, was to be married to a very powerful man, Malayadhwaja, an inhabitant of the Pandu country. After conquering other princes, he married the daughter of King Vidarbha. King Malayadhwaja fathered one daughter who had very black eyes. He also had 7 sons who later became rulers of the tract of land known as Davda. Thus, there were 7 kings in that land. My dear King Pashina Barisat, the sons of Malayadhwaja gave birth to many thousands and thousands of sons, and all of these had been protecting the entire world up to the end of one's Manu's lifespan, and even afterwards. The great sage named Agatsya married the firstborn daughter of Malayadhwaja and the avowed devotee of Lord Krishna. From her, one son was born, whose name was Dhritachyuta, and from him another son was born, whose name was Idmavaha. After this, the great saintly king Maladhwaja divided his entire kingdom among his sons. Then, in order to worship Lord Krishna with full attention, he went to a solitary place known as Kulachal. Just as the moonshine follows the moon at night, immediately after King Maladhwaja departed for Kulachala, his devoted wife, whose eyes were very enchanted, followed him, giving up all homely happiness despite family and children. In the province of Kulachala, there were many rivers named Chandravasa, Tamraparni, and Vatodaka. King Maladhwaja used to go to these pious rivers regularly and take his bath there. Thus he purified himself externally and internally. He took his bath and ate bulbs, seeds, leaves, flowers, roots, fruits, and grasses, and drank water. In this way, he underwent severe austerity. Eventually, he became very skinny. Through austerity, King Maladhwaja in his body and his mind. Who is King Maladhwaja's wife? Vedharbi. And who is Vedharbi in her previous life?
Puranjana, sir.
Right. Yeah, I'm just making sure. Right. So it's a long story, so we need to find our bearings. So while worshipping, executing austerities, and following the regulative principles, King Maladhwaja conquered his senses, his life, and consciousness. Thus, he fixed everything on the central point of the Supreme Brahman, Krishna. In this way, he stayed immovable in one place for 100 years by the calculation of the demigods. After this time, he developed pure devotional attraction for Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and remained fixed in that position. King Maladhwaja attained perfect knowledge by being able to distinguish the super soul from the individual soul. The individual soul is localized, whereas the super soul is all pervasive. He became perfect in knowledge that the material body is not the soul, but that the soul is the witness of the material body. In that way, King Maladhwaja attained perfect knowledge because in his pure state, he was directly instructed by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. By means of such enlightening transcendental knowledge, he could understand everything from the angles of vision. What was the sentence today from Bhagavad-gita?
Ignorance is the cause
Ignorance is the cause of our bondage, and knowledge is the cause of our liberation.
Right? So now what is he getting? He's getting transcendental knowledge. King Maladhwaja could thus observe that the super soul was sitting by his side and that he as the individual soul was sitting by the side of the super soul. Since both were together, there was no need for separate interest, thus he ceased from such activities. The daughter of King Vidarbha accepted her husband all in all as the supreme. She gave up all sensual enjoyment and in complete renunciation followed the principles of her husband, who was so advanced. Thus she remained engaged in his service. So see what he's doing. He's seeing that he has a husband. She's seeing that she has a husband who's more advanced than she is. Right? And so she's accepting that surrender is there. She's accepting her husband as all in all as the supreme. She's giving up all sensual enjoyment and following complete renunciation. But why? Because the husband is doing that. Right? So she remained engaged in his service. The daughter of King Vidarbha wore gold ornaments and she was lean and thin because of her woes of austerity. Since she did not arrange her hair, it became entangled and twisted in locks. Although she remained always near her husband, she was as silent and unagitated as the flame of her undisturbed fire. The daughter of King Vidarbha continued as usual to serve her husband, who was seated in a steady posture, until she could ascertain that he had passed away from the body. While she was serving her husband by massaging his legs, she could feel that his feet were no longer warm and could thus understand that he had already passed from the body. She felt great anxiety upon being left alone. Bereft of her husband's company, she felt exactly as a deer feels upon being separated from its mate. Being now alone and a widow in that forest, the daughter of Vidarbha began to lament, incessantly shedding tears which soaked her breasts and crying out very loudly. "O best of the kings, please get up, get up. Just see this world surrounded by water and infested with rogues and so-called kings. This world is very much afraid and it is your duty to protect her." The most obedient wife thus fell down at the feet of her dead husband and began to cry pitifully in that solitary forest. Thus the tears rolled down from her eyes. She then prepared a blazing fire with firewood and placed the dead body of her husband upon it. When this was finished, she lamented severely and prepared herself to perish in the fire with her husband. My dear king, one Brahmana who was an old friend of King Puranjana came to that palace and began to pacify the queen with sweet words. The Brahmana inquired as follows. So remember, he's saying old friend of King Puranjana, right? This Brahman is living long, right? Puranjana has died and has taken the body of a woman, but Brahman is still continuing. Came to that place and began to pacify the queen with sweet words. The Brahmana inquired as follows: "Who are you? Whose wife or daughter are you? Who is this mind lying here? It appears you're lamenting for his dead body. Don't you recognize me? I am your eternal friend. You may remember that many times in the past you have consulted me. The Brahman continued, my dear friend, even though you cannot immediately recognize me, can't you remember that in the past you had a very intimate friend? Unfortunately, you gave up my company and accepted a position as an enjoyer of the material world. My dear gentle friend, both you and I are exactly like two swans. We live together in the same heart, which is just like the Manasa lake. Although we have been living together for many thousands of years, we are still far away from our original home. And what is the original home called?
Vrindavan.
Yeah, Golok
Golok
Vrindavan.
Vrindavan.
Yeah, Golok Vrindavan. So my dear friend, you are now my very same friend. Since you left me, you have become more and more materialistic, and not seeing me, you have been traveling in different forms throughout this material world, which was created by some woman. In that city, the material body, there are 5 gardens, 9 gates, 1 protector, 3 apartments, 6 families, 5 stories, 5 material elements, and 1 woman who is the lord of the house. My dear friend, the 5 gardens are the 5 objects of sense enjoyment, and the protector is the life air, which passes through the 9 gates. The 3 apartments are the chief ingredients, fire, water, and earth. The 6 families are the aggregate total of the mind and 5 senses. The 5 stores are the 5 working sensory organs. They transact their business through the combined forces of the 5 elements, which are eternal. Behind all this activity is the soul. The soul is a person and an enjoyer in reality. However, because he is now hidden within the city of the body, he is devoid of knowledge. My dear friend, when you enter such a body along with the woman of material desires, you become overly absorbed in sense enjoyment. Because of this, you have forgotten your spiritual life. Due to your material conceptions, you are placed in various miserable conditions. Actually, you are not the daughter of Vidarbha, nor this man Maladhwaja, your well-wishing husband, nor were you the actual husband of Paranjani. You were simply captivated in this body of 9 gates. Sometimes you think yourself a man, sometimes a chaste woman, sometimes a neutral eunuch. This is all because of the body, which is created by illusory energy. This illusory energy is my potency, and actually both of us, you and I, are pure spiritual identities. You now just try to understand this, and I'm trying to explain our factual position. My dear friend, I, the super soul, and you, the individual soul, are not different in quality, for we are both spiritual. In fact, my dear friend, you are qualitatively not different from me in your constitutional position. Just try to consider this subject. Those who are actually advanced scholars, who are in knowledge, do not find any qualitative differences between you and me. A person sees the reflection of his body in a mirror to be one with himself and not different, whereas others actually see the 2 bodies. So in our material condition, in which the living entity is being affected and yet not affected, there is a difference between God and the living entity. In this way, both the swans live together in the heart. When one swan is instructed by the other, he is situated in his constitutional position. This means he regains his original Krishna consciousness, which was lost because of his material attraction. My dear King Parchina Barhi, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the cause of all causes, is celebrated to be known indirectly. Thus, I have described the story of Puranjana to you. Actually, it's an instruction for self-realization. So I will stop over here, this story. And for the few minutes that we have,
Nice.
take some reflection.
So absorbing.
It was an absorbing story, very, very absorbing story. And it's the story of our lives, right?
So Mataji, the super soul which is described here, that means the Lord himself came and guided her.
As a Brahmana. Yes, as the Brahmana, he came and he answered. Yeah.
So
Actually, there's a
this
whole
also
chapter.
will come only.
Go
This
ahead.
can only come if we have done some good karmas before in the previous birth. Then only God will come and
that is true. That is very true. And if you notice that this Pachin Bar, he's a good man, and obviously has got some good karmic things piled up for him, and he's a king. He has got power. This means that he's reaping the results of some pious activities he has done in his past. But you see, just pious activities are not good enough. And that's what today's verse is saying. And last week's verse was saying that it's only devotional service that will burn to ashes. So you see, in his case, he has done a lot of pious activities. Pious activities, you do give $10, you'll get back $10 in your next life, right? It comes back to you, karmic reactions. But then there is this, always, if you're not devotionally strong, you don't have that spiritual strength in you, then anybody can, get waylaid. Like this Prachin Bahari was laid, is gone for hundreds of years, right? And in the end, he's completely entangled with sons, grandsons, this and that. And then, it goes, it just goes. But then again, in his next life, when he becomes a woman, he becomes a very beautiful woman. So beauty and all that, beauty, fame, power, these are all results of good activities that people do in their previous birth, like that. On the other hand, if you do some karmic reactions are coming, then you'll have big legal battles and, or you will be defamed. So those kind of things happen. Or not have a good bodily features. Those all come from karmic reactions. So definitely in this case, he has something good going on. That's why you see in his other births also. And then the super soul. And why? Because it must have done some devotional service sometime for Krishna to have come to, address him, right? But again, remember, this is a story. This is a story. And so then in the next chapter, which is a very long chapter, this King Prachina Barhi, who's being told the story of Puranjana, right? So he is, he just says that, well, I could not completely appreciate what you were trying to tell me, because those who are perfect in spiritual knowledge, right? Like one of you asked that question, like, is that Brahmana, is he Krishna? Why did you ask Krishna? Why did you say Krishna? Because you have got that transcendental knowledge, right? Because he's saying we are like swans. We live in the same heart. So immediately say, oh, but this is Paramatma. This Paramatma is talking to him, like that, right? So because you have got that knowledge. So he's saying those who are spiritually advanced, they will understand the story. But he says, I am so much deep into the material enjoyment, right? Completely. And then so many times we're saying that people who indulge with the opposite gender, right? So their intelligence goes bad. That is why, those who are brahmacharis and all, you see a special tej coming out of the face, it's all, and they are so good at patan, right? So they understand the scriptures, they can memorize verses and all that kind of stuff. So it all comes from there. So he then goes and says that I did not understand the real purpose. Then that whole next chapter I will explain, what was that serpent who's always guarding the city? Who's that? That's the Pranvayu. So the Pranvayu also, city of 9 gates. Nalini, Nalini, these are nostrils. He's talking about 10 people going with him. The senses are there. This year, he's describing all that, the senses. So he will explain that in the next verse. But we have already done that, so we can stop, right? We already know, so we don't have to necessarily have him explain like that. Yeah. So any reflections? We have 5 minutes. And thank you, Satapa, for... So then in the end, after this kind of a story is known as an allegory, where he's explaining certain things to him, but he's using examples. Like instead of saying Pranvayu, he's saying the serpent, right? So this kind of narration is called allegory. And so when he explains all that, and he's explaining that to Prachina Bahari, because what Prachina Bahari is doing, remember, his sons are doing austerities based on what Shiva has taught, and here he is now indulging in karmakandi activities to get more satisfaction, more sense enjoyment, like that, right? So Narad Muni tells him this story. And then after all that, in the end, he says, is it about me? He gets that knowledge. And he says, is it about me? And then Narad said, yes, it is about you. Like that, a true teacher will tell you that. A true guru will be point blank at some point and say, yes, like that, right? So he says, yes, it is you. And then he understands, he gives up. That's why the story of Prachin Bahari is very, very famous. You'll see a lot of people, bring this up, and of course Puranjan, right? Puranjan is the soul.
Story.
Yeah,
When
Bhagavatam
will happen to us, Mataji, that Lord will come in the form of Brahmana and Super Soul? Tell us that. Right.
Yeah. So today's verse was talking about, right? That ignorance is a cause of bondage. So you see what extreme bondage he got into. That getting out of it so difficult, and so many times, he's thinking about his wife. Who's going to protect the wife? The wife has got hundreds of sons, 1,100, and they won't take care of her. You have to take care of them, and you are thinking about that. So at Antakale, what should you do?
Antakale cha mameva smaranat
Kalevaram.
Yes, Antakale cha mameva books. Yeah. So Smaran Mukpa Kalevaram. So we have to think about Krishna at the end of our lives. right? Parikshit Maharaj asked that question, right? What should a man do at the time of death?
At the time of death.
Antakale, think about me.
Chumma.
Okay? All right. So should I take leave of you all? And there's a lot for us to think about, right? We are all Parchin Baharis in our own ways. Maybe not that extreme, but it's a percentage of Parchin Baharis in all of us. And so we have to...
My iPad battery is almost 8%.
8% will last for a long time, don't worry. Yeah. So Chandavega, Yavana, Yavanraj, Kalya Kanya has age, old age comes, right? And then in the old age comes, the wife also became indifferent because he doesn't look good. And why is he not looking good? Because he lost all his luster because of indulgence. So it's very, very important for us to have control of our senses and put our heads. So this one is a Grahamedhi, right? We talked about Grihasthas and Grahamedhi. He's a Grahamedhi, just that only to enjoy the wife. You go into a Grihastha ashram so that the two of them together can go for Krishna, like that, right? If they don't do it, then there are problems there.
It's a very good one.
All righty, then we'll meet some of you on Sunday. Hopefully, if I wake up at 6:30 and in the morning, to
Thank
do a
you
work.
so much,
Yeah, very cold,
Awesome
very
class.
cold front is going
Awesome.
here.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna.
Krishna, Mataji. Mataji, can I call you for 5 minutes after the class?
Sure.
Just for 5
Actually,
minutes.
but it'll have to be 5 minutes because 2 people already called me during the
Yes.
class. But really quickly after the class. Okay, yeah, sure. Vanchukalpatarubhyascha kripasindhubhyevacha patitanam pavnebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Gaur Premanande. Hari Hari Bol.
Hari Bol, Shraddha Mataji.
Thank you,
Hari Bol.
Mataji.
Dhanvat